In this session, we're going to talk about the concept of activity-based costing. But before we get into it, I have a question for you. You've heard about shirts or hats that say one size fits all, but does one size really fit all? So let's take this for example. Let's say we've got you and there's this hat and you go to put on the hat and yep, it fits you just perfectly. So you must be the person the hat was made for. But what about if it wasn't you? What if instead it was your little brother or sister? Wow, they get swallowed up by the hat. Hat doesn't really fit them very well. And then what if instead of your little brother or sister, it was somebody with a much, much bigger head? Well, it would just barely sit on top of their head. It doesn't fit them at all. They would look very silly. It wouldn't protect them like a hat should. So for the question, does one size fit all? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Well, this is what we've been doing with manufacturing overhead. When we allocate manufacturing overhead, we take these costs that are from various areas and we try to squeeze them into one predetermined overhead rate, saying everything's based on direct labor hours or machine hours or units produced or direct labor cost. But the fact of the matter is one size doesn't fit all, and not all manufacturing overhead costs behave in similar ways. So what activity-based costing does is it takes these costs and it attempts to put them into what we call cost pools, or how costs behave similar to each other. So let's go down here to this example. And what I've done here is I have created a couple different overhead costs. All right, and we've got 3 buckets. So we're going to try to take these costs and we're going to try to see which ones are similar to the others. So for example, machinery rental. Well, that's probably based on something like the amount we use the machine. So let's put that one down here in the purple bucket. And we're going to go ahead and name this one machinery hours. Okay. All right. Let's do factory property taxes. What drives property taxes? Well, it's nothing we do. So it's probably based more on a time passage thing and outside forces or externalities than on things that we can do. So they're going to go over here in this yellow bucket. And we're going to name this yellow bucket time, because it's time that decides what really affects these things, or something outside, not something that we do. All right, grease for the machinery. That's definitely an overhead cost. Oh, it's a variable cost too, whereas the property taxes and the machine rental were fixed. I'm guessing the more we run our machines, the more grease we'll need. So that's going to go over here in the purple bucket. All right, next, maintenance workers' wages. What kind of things? Well, it's a variable cost because wages are variable based on time. So what do we think about that? Is that going to be based on time? Is it going to be based on machine hours, or might it be based on something else? I think the maintenance on the might be based on the machine, since the maintenance is on the machinery. So we're going to go ahead and put it over here in the purple bucket as well. All right, I selected security guards' wages. So we have all these security guards and their wages. It may not be based on the number of machine hours and its wages, so it's not based on time passage like month to month. Maybe it's based on, let's see, what could we do it based on? We could do it based on square footage or direct labor cost, or we could base it on, I don't know, some other factor. But I think let's go ahead and let's do it based on direct labor hours. Let's try that one. Now, how do we know which one of these is best? Well, what we do is we're going to, having an understanding of our company, we would then go and look at each of these costs and try to find out what drives them to increase. What kind of things we do can increase them. All right, so the security guards' wages, we're going to say we have more security guards there if we have more people working more shifts. What's next? The internet. What makes your internet bill go up? Well, it has nothing to do with how many hours we run the machines or how many hours people work. It's probably just based on time passage. So we're going to put it over here in the yellow bin. What about factory insurance? Insurance, once again, is based on by month, so it goes over in the time bin. Supervisors' salaries. Well, one thing we know about salaries is salaries are fixed and they don't change based on activity. So supervisor salaries could go over here under time. Now, it may go over underneath direct labor hours if we find that we have to hire more supervisors if we end up with a huge amount of direct labor hours that need to be added. But for right now, let's go ahead and just stick it in the time one. Water, water and electricity, both of those are utilities. I'm guessing the water, if we're a typical factory, might be more based on the direct labor hours, because when people are there, they're using the restroom, they're using the break room, and things like that. So let's go there. Building maintenance, like what we have to do to repair broken things, repaint buildings and things like that. It may be based on time, but I know the more people that are in the building, the more it wears out. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it there under direct labor hours. Break room supplies, that definitely has to do with people. And electricity. I'm guessing our machines are run by electricity, so let's go ahead and stick it there. Now, electricity could go over underneath direct labor hours if we don't have the machines running, less people are there. It would kind of depend. But I guess the more machines we have running. Now, which one of these is the best? We don't know. And this comes up to one of the problems that we have with activity-based costing. I just made some decisions based on what I surmised each of these costs were and how they behaved. It's not perfect, but the decisions that have to be made are made by individuals, and they have to be constantly reevaluated based on what happens at the business. But as you can see, the machine hours, we have some variable cost, and the machine rental, which is a fixed cost, and then electricity, which is a mixed cost. Under direct labor hours, we have wages, water, building maintenance, and supplies. The water and the building maintenance, mixed cost, the wages and the supplies, variable. But under time, what you notice is they're all going to be fixed costs, because anything we do doesn't really affect them. It would be something from corporate renegotiating the insurance policy or something like that. So what we've done here is we've created cost pools. So instead of one big predetermined overhead rate, in this particular scenario, we would have three. We would take all the costs associated with workers' wages, machinery rental, grease, and electricity, and divide it by the number of machine hours to get that rate. Then for direct labor hours, we would take all these four costs and divide it by the number of direct labor hours for the period. And then the time ones probably aren't going to be allocated at all, because these are going to be considered period costs and probably not going to be allocated to the product itself, because they're there one way or the other. So what's the benefit of activity-based costing? Well, we're going to get better cost control because we're looking at them from a different viewpoint rather than throwing everything into one junk drawer. We're going to get better cost allocation because and that's going to yield better pricing of our products. Remember that cost of a product is the main factor in determining the price of the product. We're also going to focus our decisions on only factors that are relevant to our decisions, which will help managers make sure that their time is better spent. And finally, we're going to be able to make sure that we maximize cost towards achieving good quality and minimize cost incurred dealing with poor quality. So step one, identify our activities. Step two, try to figure out what allocation base they're in. Assign them to the pools, come up with your multiple predetermined overhead rates, and then allocate based upon the hours, machine hours, direct labor hours that are allocated to a particular job, giving us a more accurate product cost, yielding a better product price and more profitability. Okay, and that ends our introduction to ABC costing.